again, then I'm going to be upset about that.
I don't think the Bell's palsy is going to come back, Lindsay.
If it does, you know what? Just memorize what my face looks like now. It's the last time you're going to see it.
We'll do a screenshot. We'll just put your face.
You know what? We'll use the new Vidyard AI video creation thing.
We'll
if you guys haven't heard of this, there's an incredible software out that friends of ours have created with their company Vidyard, where you can literally type in what you're saying. Actually, this might be AI right now.
Could be.
You'll never know. But you just have to like create a model of yourself. It's crazy.
Yeah, you just do like a bit of a like, not even mocap, just like screen recording of your face, kind of like how you're setting up a new iPhone for face detection. And then you are able to type out, after you use some voice capture as well. So it analyzes your voice and understands, your speech patterns.
Yeah.
And you can just type out a whole podcast.
That'll be episode 13.
Taylor Jackson's very excited about that one because he can kick out a video as quick as he can type. Welcome to Shoot Your Shot, the podcast. Lindsay.
Cheers, Tim.
I'm Tim.
It feels good to be here.
It feels great. This is Lindsay. We are wedding and portrait photographers. And this is the podcast that is a call-in photography-based show where you send your DMs, give us your voice notes, be anonymous if you want, on the Shoot Your Shot podcast on Instagram. And we answer your questions and make you a better business person, a better photographer through our immaculate wisdom of photography.
That's the goal. That's the goal in life.
Show.
That's the entire show. We also talk about hot takes, interesting stories. As we get deeper into wedding season and just a busier portrait season, we're going to share our own stories. We're never going to share anything like shady of our clients. It's not our brand.
And this is
but you can.
We're happy to take your crazy ideas.
You can tell your
stories.
things. We'll keep them anonymous.
Yeah.
We would love to hear any concerns that you have in your business, any exciting stories of big wins that you have.
Oh, I'd love that.
We also just love to talk about things that are going on in the industry. The photography industry, the creative industry is really rapidly changing right now.
Absolutely.
And as the economy grows and changes, so do you as a photographer. And that's what we're here to talk about.
But we want to keep it positive. That's our goal with this show, is to make it a positive experience for everyone. And
Fun.
just, raise all the boats with the whole tide. We start the show with a question that we ask of the holy, delightful Magic 8 Ball. If you are wanting to see our reactions to this 8 Ball question, you can check us out on YouTube.
It'd also be really fun.
What do you got?
People should ask us questions that we can ask the 8 Ball. I think that would be really helpful. So
8 Ball cues.
Yeah, give us your little stories, but also give us a question. Because the other thing is, Tim and I do plan out these episodes. Believe it or not, if you've ever listened to another episode, you might not believe that, but we do plan out these episodes.
We're just that good.
But the one thing we don't plan out is what we're going to ask the 8 Ball, and I'm prepared for it. So what are you going to ask the 8 Ball today, Tim? Not to put you on the spot, but ask the 8 Ball a question.
I have a wedding this weekend coming up.
Okay.
And like everyone who doesn't know what to talk about, I'm going to ask about the weather and talk about the weather. It is a Muskoka wedding for a friend, and it is outdoors. So I am hopeful that the Magic 8 Ball is generous with a favorable forecast. Will it be a nice wedding day?
Are we going to get nice weather in Muskoka this weekend?
Please and thank you.
Ooh, cannot predict now. It's a little too early. Just like AccuWeather also cannot predict it right now.
Okay.
So too can the Magic 8 Ball.
Great.
It's probably just as accurate as the Weather Network, though.
Let's hope. I mean, we can hope. That sounds great. Sounds amazing.
We've had some really interesting weather up here in Ontario this month. It's been like a summer heat for the past week. It's been like 31 degrees Celsius for a week now.
We had weddings this past weekend.
We did,
Canada Long Weekend,
yeah.
May 21st.
Yeah, that was
May
not
20th?
the Canada.
May 20th?
Victoria.
May 20th? Yeah, that's it. That's right.
Yeah.
I was at a chapel wedding on Saturday, and then I joined you to Second for You in Windsor for a wedding on Sunday, which was delightful. Very warm, very hot.
It was really hot.
Many changes of clothes, but
I shot a wedding in Elora,
at
the Elora Mill on Saturday, which was lovely. Just a shorty, just an 8-hour day in Elora, easy peasy. And then, Tim and I did a 10-hour day in Windsor, which for those of you who are either geographically challenged or you're just not from this area, Tim and I live in Kitchener-Waterloo, which is not quite the GTA. It's like about an hour from Toronto, but it's about 3 hours under good circumstances to Windsor. Yeah. Windsor is so far away that when you get to Windsor, there's a sign that says Bridge to USA. And that's when I'm always like, we've come too
need
far.
To be here? This is
Yeah,
a bit
we've
too
come
close.
too far.
Yeah.
But it was for a phenomenal couple, and I would do it
Yes.
any day of the week for them.
Same.
We had so much fun.
Yeah.
We brought a change of clothes
We had
because
to.
it was so freaking hot, and we were driving so many hours. But yeah, what did we say when we got home? It was like an 18-hour day.
Yeah, which is unreasonable.
Yeah,
but
it was a lot. It was a lot. But we had a blast, and that's the job, you know?
That's the job.
Actually, you know what's interesting?
Hit me.
I do want to go back. I know we have a plan to talk
Okay,
about
yes.
sales from last week.
Yes, we have a
because
plan.
we talked about sales in our episode last week. If you haven't listened to it, make sure you go back and listen to episode
Mm-hmm.
11. But is that right? 11?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But the first thing I want to talk about is something that we talked about on our drive. Honestly, we should have just done an episode of the Shoot Your Shot podcast in my car.
I think about that all the time. I want to maximize the time I have in my day to record a podcast.
Yeah.
Like if I'm waiting for like a thing to cook, I'm like, I could use this time to like
Podcast.
And I'm like, wait a minute, you can just be a person. But like for things like that, where the two of us,
We are
and
chatting.
we have this relationship here on this podcast, we should utilize that.
We're
to, like-
basically podcasting in the car.
Exactly.
But it's okay. It gives us time to just actually be human beings instead of humans recording.
Yeah.
But we were talking about
Sales.
one step before that, we
Okay.
were talking about how sometimes when you tell people that aren't in the industry what you're up to for the long weekend or for any weekend in general, or just even like that night, you'll tell them, oh yeah, I've got 2 weddings this weekend, and you're excited about that. Damn, we worked hard to get those 2 weddings.
Yes.
You're like, this is a win. I'm excited. I love my clients.
Yes.
I love shooting weddings. That's why I do it. Like it's not a chore for me.
No.
I genuinely enjoy doing
We chose this.
People get paid to do far worse jobs. And it's so wild to me that sometimes the reaction that we'll get from family members, friends, just random people we don't know is like, oh, I'm sorry.
That's unfortunate. You have
Like,
to
do you guys
work.
get this? Like when you tell somebody that you're shooting a wedding on the weekend, or, oh, you can't do brunch on Sunday because you have a family shoot to
you
do
have
or
to
something.
work.
Oh,
I,
do you have to
I
work?
chose to work, and also, what are you doing on Wednesday?
I
Because I'm
enjoy
doing
my
nothing
job,
on
man.
Wednesday. Yeah, I like the work I do.
Yeah,
that's why I
enjoy
chose this
it.
career.
So I don't know. We were talking about that and how sometimes you'll get the like sort of pity party from people.
Yeah, it's
They're
very
like,
strange
I'm so
to
sorry
me.
to hear that.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things, and I actually made a reel about it last year.
Yeah.
Because it was so sweet.
Okay.
Was I ran into one of my neighbors in the elevator, this like older woman who's like pretty much the classic what I would have expected the person to do that. Oh, you're off to work?
Okay. Yeah.
But it was a weekend, and I was actually coming into the studio. So I was like all dressed up. I had like 1,000 bags, as I usually do when I'm coming into the studio, because I'm like, I have this out for this. I've got like my gear bag,
Yeah.
whatever. And someone said, oh, are you off to work? What do you do? And I said, yeah, I'm a photographer. And I'm off to work today.
Yeah.
And instead of her saying, oh, I'm so sorry, that must be tough, or that must be a hard job, or anything
Like,
like
pay you for that? Why would they pay you for that?
she literally goes, that must be such a rewarding job. And I was like, if only we all framed our responses to what people did. And like, I've probably done it to my friends that are nurses,
Yeah.
or like people that do have like genuinely hard jobs. Like photography, truthfully, is just not that hard of a job.
No.
But like people that work in emergency rooms, or are first responders, or
Yeah.
I mean, even in like intensive labor jobs.
People who work at like nuclear plants, that's a crazy
Right.
job.
That's a
Yeah.
really challenging job.
Yeah.
But it must suck hearing, oh, that must be so hard every time somebody asks you what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started saying, oh, that must be really rewarding.
That's very nice.
But anyways, I was just thinking of that because that's what we were talking about on our drive to Windsor.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting.
an aside.
My family has gotten better at reacting positively to it, because they realize
That's
that
good.
that's money
That's a
in
win.
the bank. That's money in the bank, and that's something you love
Yeah.
doing. Like
Yeah.
they've seen me do it a couple times now. They've been to weddings
where you're
where I've
working.
been working, and they're like, oh, like I get why he does this. Like he's good at it.
I don't think my family's ever seen me.
No,
I don't
interesting.
think so. I don't
Okay,
think they've seen
that's
me
wild.
working. I guess none of my family wants to hire me.
But I think if you're going through that yourself,
No,
Oh,
none
no.
of my family is married,
Oh, no.
actually. All of my cousins, like, I love this for them.
Yeah.
They are either in long-term relationships or not, but they just do things on their own terms, and they just didn't get married. And I think that's
Interesting.
a slay.
Huh.
Um,
I think if you're going through this though, and you have family members or friends who are like, oh, you can't, maybe I would just have a bit of a discussion with them, pull them aside. Maybe not after they've done it, but maybe
Yeah.
when you're going to bring up the idea of working on a weekend where you want to let them know that's your camera. There's my
Hi.
camera, and there I am. I slate my own.
yeah,
my
there
own
you
shot.
are.
Just say, hey, here's an idea. when you say things like on and you're upset or you feel like it's a negative that I'm working, I would say, hey, maybe we could reframe that, because I really enjoy my job. And I understand that not everyone likes their job.
Yeah.
Everyone sees, a lot of people actually see their job as a means to an end to survive and live. Whereas what we do as photographers is much more of a, I don't want to say vocation, but it's a thing that if you try out and you are not great at, you know right away. If you try it and you're like, oh, there's something there, I want to keep doing it, you continue doing it for a long time.
Yes.
For almost like too long.
Yes.
In some cases for some people. It becomes a way of life in a lot of ways. And when you say things, this is, again, you having a discussion with your family member or friend, when you say things like, oh, that's too bad you're working, it makes me feel, personally feel like what I'm doing is a stepping stone position or a thing that I shouldn't be doing.
Oh my God.
And that doesn't feel nice in my heart.
That's so true.
That's so disheartening. And it makes me feel like you don't respect the work that I do or value the work that I do, even worse. And I'd like to light your family photos on fire and then see how happy you'd be at that point, because you'd be miserable. The things that we do, the photos that we create and the memories we capture are only important further down the line, I feel, for a lot of people. And that's unfortunate. And I want to, it's an aggressive way to say this, but I want you to maybe educate the people in your life to tell them, like, hey, this is important to me. What I do is important to me, and it is important to you as a human being who has photos taken eventually by someone. So I want you to kind of respect, the idea that what I do is valuable to me, regardless if it's on a weekend. And I understand. Yeah. Listen, people in your life, they want you to be available on weekends because they want to hang out with you, and that totally makes sense. I want to hang out with people when I want to hang out with them. I want to hang out with the people when I want to hang out with them. I'm stop mumbling. And it's a disappointment when I can't. But also, if this is, your job, give us some grace. You know what I mean? Like, give us some.
Absolutely. I think that's totally right.
I hope I made sense there. I was very passionate.
100%
I feel like this is a therapy session.
It is. I know. Sorry. This was like my one aside, and this is the whole episode now. But I think this is great because under a couple of. This is the whole show, Tim.
There was meat in there, right? There was some meat in there that made sense? Okay.
I would say a couple of things that I'm going to pull out of that I think are fantastic is that one of the things that feels bad when someone says, oh, you have to work on the weekend. One, you feel like you're disappointing people.
Yeah.
If us seeing each other on the weekend is the only time that you're ever going to be able to see me, prepare to be disappointed.
It's mostly a weekend job.
Unfortunately, prepare to be disappointed. Yep. I could keep asking people, and this happened honestly for probably 5 to 7 years when I first started. Like literally for 5 to 7 years, people, my parents specifically, were so funny about it. They'd be like, "What are you up to this weekend? Do you want to come to blah blah blah?" And I'm like, again, I will reiterate, I'm still shooting weddings, still a wedding photographer, thankfully.
Yeah.
God willing, they keep booking me. And so, yes, I'm still unavailable for whatever the family thing is that's going on the weekend.
Yeah.
I almost wanted to start being like, what are you up to on Tuesday? You guys want to start hanging out on Tuesday? You guys got anything going on Tuesday?
It's between the hours of 9 and 4:30.
It's gotten much easier since my parents are both retired now.
Yeah.
Now,
they're like, oh yeah, let's go.
Yeah, and also honestly, since I stopped shooting 60 weddings a year, because I do have some more weekends available. Yeah. But yeah, you feel sad letting people down. But the other thing is, it makes you think that people think that your job is just a stepping stone. One of the things that somebody said to me once was, "Well, you're not going to be a wedding photographer forever, are you?" Well, like,
what if I wanted to
be? Mean, like, not to cut to the core of my own personal fears and traumas, but I don't know what the next step is just yet if it's not this.
Yeah.
Like, that's like saying, like, oh, well, you don't want to do your job for the rest of your life, are you? Like, what a crazy thing to say. I think
to someone who has like
our jobs are
literal
physical
dream job. If you're still doing it, it's because you love it. Why wouldn't I want to do something I really enjoy?
It is really tough working
for the
2
rest
days a
of
week
my
with
life.
People that are literally gorgeous and happy
and having the happiest day of their life,
drinking champagne
and having a party at the end of it. You
it's
bookmark with anticipation of like the loveliest day of your life. Excited to see everyone, and then you get to party with those people at the end of the day. What a nightmare thing to document and spend all day eating tiramisu at. Like, what? Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Man. Sorry, I know we started the episode saying we're gonna be really positive, but this is one of those things that really bothers me. So.
That's that. One thing that I want to discuss really briefly.
Yes, please.
And I promise it will be brief.
Okay, great.
Is the book that I've been reading, and I say reading. and I mean listening too, but that's the same thing, I think, reading and listening, to this book by Seth Godin.
The Practice.
Yes. We were talking about this, right, Tim? So Tim turned me on to him because you had listened to another book of his.
Linchpin, or there's a few he's written.
I don't know. He's a fantastic author. Anyways, if you're a working professional creative, a person who is attempting to sell creative work, I highly recommend listening to this book. But it's so funny because last week on the episode, we were talking about why sales feel cringy, right? I think it was last week's episode.
It was, yeah.
Why some people are afraid. Oh, it was Ben's question
yes.
saying, why are photographers afraid of selling? And we talked about this for like almost an entire episode, and Seth very succinctly brought it all together in like 30 seconds in his book. And I just want to share this in case anybody is still feeling like icky or weird about selling.
Yep.
So basically in this book, Seth says that the reason why not just photographers, why creatives specifically can feel weird about selling is because selling can feel manipulative.
Right.
And he said, so it's important for him to come up with some sort of marker or gauge as to determine when something is actually manipulative. Right. Like, when are sales manipulative? When is it not a good idea to be selling something? And when is it actually a service that we're offering to our clients, which is what we were talking about, right? Like, we talked about that in our album sales episode. We talked about that when we were talking about upselling. Yeah. And the point at which you can determine if something is manipulative or not, he uses this framework of if your customer or your potential customer knew everything that there was to know, if they knew everything that you know about the service that you're trying to sell, would they still want to buy it? And I think that's such a delightful way of framing it. And it's such a good marker for all of us that have to sell something, because I think that the reason why, like, let's go back to album sales, why we like to sell albums is because we know how valuable those are to our clients. Absolutely. We know how much they love them. They don't know that yet. No. They don't know that. They don't always know that, right? That's part of the reason why we sell. Yep. If we were just only selling things that people have asked for, that's not really sales, right? No. But when we're encouraging people, like, yeah, you know what? In my experience, my clients do prefer the 10 hours because it's just a more relaxed way of spending their wedding day instead of the 8 hours. Yeah. That's what I know confidently. So if these people had the 10 plus years of knowledge or whatever that we have, and they had the experience of working with other clients and they had all of that information, they probably would want that thing. Yeah. Then that's a good thing to sell. If you're trying to sell them on something that they know the end, they know everything that you know, and they would not, then no need to sell. No sale needed. Not a good vibes, not a good thing to sell. Yeah. Anyways, I thought that was a good little marker, and I wanted to share that. It's a beautiful. Are you listening to anything or reading or whatever? No. Well, you turned me on to this book that I think either I recommended to you or I'd already read it because it was so familiar to me. Like, I opened up I think I have a hard copy or soft back somewhere. A physical copy of this book, but I opened it up I have a ton of credits on Audible. And so I opened it up, and like the first couple chapters, I'm like, oh, I've heard this. Like, I've heard all this before, and it's a really good reminder. It's something I recommend. It's one of those books that you should probably revisit like once a year, just to give you some reminders of like the important things of what you should focus on as a creative or a photographer, or really anyone who's come up with an idea and wants to bring it to the world. That's kind of what he, I think it's called The Practice. Yeah. And it's like shipping creative work. Yeah. And it's like getting it out there. Yeah. And it's similar to like Stephen Pressfield's, what's that one? Something like an art of war of art, I think it is. I know Art of War, but I don't think that's it. No, there's two. He did like a flip on it. Yeah. That's the play on words. But it's basically just like, don't be so tied to the outcome of the work that you create. Keep shipping work. Don't stop shipping work, and don't let the success of that work be tied to the outcome of the work that you're shipping. Just keep putting it out there and then repeat, and then don't worry about the end goal while you're creating something, which is crazy hard to do, especially when your end goal is making money, because it can be really challenging. But if you're not
Yeah.
If you truly do enjoy the process of creating your work, which I do enjoy it, but I also enjoy it because I have the comfort of money in my bank account.
True.
But it can be really scary to not be thinking about the end goal.
It's a weird
when you're a working
dichotomy,
creative, right?
Can we break that down even further? Like on wedding days, there's a specific number of shots that either is predetermined by the bride and groom, or the bride and bride, or the groom and groom, that they kind of want as like we want these shots, whether they're shots with grandma, shots with parents, the traditional shots of the couple walking down the aisle, first kiss, signing, whatever it may be. Those are like I'm going to say like capital A must get shots that every photographer has, right? And then you have the periphery shots, like more candid stuff. And that's kind of like open to interpretation as you as a photographer. It's the kind of stuff that you capture because you think it's important to the couple.
Yeah.
Moments that you think like, oh, that'd be a really nice moment, or you anticipate something that's happening. You're like, oh, that's cool. I'm glad I captured that. That tells the story of the day. Talking about not focusing on the outcome, how much of the day, like when you're starting out, you want to kind of capture everything. But now that we've kind of seasoned ourselves, and we're in this stage in our careers as photographers, do you find yourself in more of a flow state now, or are you still working towards building that album and like, this is a printable photo? Like how much of that balance do you have, Lindsay, as a photographer, where it's like, I feel like I'm in a mental state that's flow. I'm not worried about the outcome. That's how you get in that state, by the way, is you're just like in the work, and then the inspiration happens and you start to click, pun intended. You start to create things that are beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you start with like a list in your mind and then say, got those, let's move to the flow state? Or do you just kind of
that
live
has
in
to be part of the flow state?
Okay.
I think it has to be part of the flow state.
Okay.
Do you not think? I think that the pre-production is so important, that
Absolutely.
those conversations we have with our clients about timing and locations and the types of shots that we're going to get, so that those shots happen naturally because those people are in front of you, and we have intended for them to be here at this time.
Yes.
The times that the wedding days that feel the worst for me
Okay.
are the ones where I feel like my clients can't let go of control.
Right.
And they're not allowing me to just do what I absolutely know makes the most sense and works the best and feels good and I know will flow really, really well. So for an example, like if clients are saying, I'm going to go to this location and then we just really like this one and then we're going to go to this one. And I'm like, okay, so it would actually make much more sense if we did this, this, and this because these people will be here. And maybe time of day, the light will be nicer here, and maybe just driving wise, if we are actually driving or walking or whatever, it makes more sense for us to do this way.
Right.
But when they fight that, that's when I really fall out of flow state and I become a button pusher and a picture taker, and I am literally just going off of, it's your choice now. Like at the end of today, I want you to have the gallery that you've asked for.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most of my clients ask for the gallery that I think works best.
I love that.
But every once in a while, they
want to take the reins,
have to take too much control.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I know that there are photographers that will say, I'm shooting this wedding how I know it works best, and I know that this is going to be best, and God love ya.
Yeah.
But it couldn't be me because I know how much conflict and friction that will cause my clients in their own minds, and how much conflict and friction that's going to cause us after the wedding, especially if anything goes wrong. If I've been like, hey, listen, I am firmly standing in my plan. This is how I'd like things to go. And I know these shots need to happen and I know where they need to happen. And I'm unfortunately not going with your plan. If anything goes south there, whether it's due to my own, anything within my power, it could be the venue, it could be
weather.
Grandma decided to not show up to the location. And now all I get is the couple being like, if this isn't exactly what we thought would happen, right? Like, and those things could have gone wrong, whether it was their plan or my plan.
Yeah.
But now, because I so forcefully said, this is my plan.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's their wedding day.
Absolutely.
And I want them to feel like they got exactly what they wanted out of that day.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes the flow state doesn't happen. I would say 95% of the time now the flow state happens for me, but the flow state happens for me because I set up the shots in such a way that they work with the whole schedule.
Yeah.
That they just like sort of happen. The only time I will I think it's still a flow,
Okay.
but I'll pull myself out of it intentionally is bride and groom portraits when
Right.
I'm really trying to do something interesting or different or
Well, that is kind of flow state, isn't that? That's kind of like a
it's
creative
still
space.
a flow, but I would say instead of going with the flow of the day,
Okay.
I'm more thinking about, were there any photos that I had thought of this week that I thought would be interesting at this location? Or were there poses that I was considering for this couple? Like I almost go into my like virtual inspo board in my mind.
Yeah.
And that I would say like it pulls me a little bit out of that state of that frame of mind.
Okay.
Solely just because it takes more conscious thought. You know, I'm really consciously thinking about what I want to do here.
Right.
And if I don't do that, I might end up just doing the same kind of poses and the same kinds of things I've been doing for a really long time.
Yeah.
Shooting at new venues is really fun for that because
is.
you're constantly forced to think of where you want to go.
You're always checking your periphery. You're always looking for like what could be an interest. Like this past weekend on Sunday, we were at Essex Golf and Country Club with a lovely couple. Never been there before, but it had familiar vibes of a venue we work at often here in town called Westmount Golf Club. Just because like the old growth, giant trees, winding path, all of Ontario pretty much looks the same at this point. But yeah, it was very familiar to that. So we had kind of like a familiarity, but there's also, there's a really neat clock. There's some really interesting buildings that look like old German, like Black Forest kind of cake versions of buildings. Like it was beautiful. And like it was traditional, but it was also very familiar. And I thought that was really interesting. Like we kind of knew where the light was going to be, able to get some nice sunset stuff, but it was also like, yeah, we're new here. You know what I mean? Like it's different.
It actually made me uncomfortable.
Did it? Okay.
I won't lie.
Tell me about that.
I honestly felt really, really uncomfy. And I think it's probably because the videographer was very familiar with the location.
Okay.
So I kept on, if he hadn't been familiar and if nobody else there was familiar, I think I would have maybe explored a little bit more. Okay. Also, the bride had a very heavy dress on, right? She had had like this stunning beaded gown, and it was the most humid day ever. So I don't think that she really was like in the mood to explore too much. But I felt like I leaned on Mike, the videographer, and Owen. They were phenomenal to work with, so I'm not blaming them at all for this, and it's probably on me. But I was like, well, I don't know this area really well, so you tell me, like, where would you usually go?
Yeah.
But he's probably so used to photographers taking
the reins
location that he's like, I don't know, man, like, you decide. I felt like we had a really good collaborative experience. It's probably one of the first weddings I felt that not even just between Mike and me, but between you and me and Mike and Owen, like the seconds of the photo and video team where like you were the one that found the sunset spot that I wouldn't have seen because you went for a little walk during dinner, which was really helpful. But I was struggling because I'm so used to shooting at Pearl venues. I'm so used to shooting at the same ones where I can get creative with posing and direction.
Knowing the background's going to be...
Locations are very prescribed.
True.
We know them so well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an interesting challenge. It was a creative challenge. I did really enjoy it. And honestly, like, I wouldn't change anything about the outcome. I've already called and run the images through Imagine.
Oh, they look incredible. You shared a few with them already.
Very confident in them.
But also, we did a first look location at a separate park we've never been to before.
Yes.
So, like, we did a lot that day. We were in two separate locations, a beautiful condo of the groom and his parents, and then you were at the Caesars Hotel, like the
that
casino.
was the most stressful part of my day, to be honest, was
yeah.
that I was shooting at the hotel room was in the Caesars casino hotel block.
Yeah.
And because we were driving 3 hours away, like generally how this would go is if we were starting at the exact same time, Tim and I would just drive separately to our two locations. But because we were driving 3 hours away, we were obviously only going to take one vehicle. Yeah. So I dropped Tim off like quite early. Like you were there, I would say about a half an hour early.
Yeah, I had a banana.
I didn't want him to like be chilling and interrupting the guys. Like it'd be one thing to show up early for the girls getting ready, but to show up for the guys getting ready, like they're not going to be ready for that.
I found shade. It was lovely. Yeah.
So I dropped him off about a half an hour early, and then as I'm and it's like a 15-minute drive, so I was planning on being half an hour early to get to the girls.
Exactly.
And I get 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes down the road.
Okay.
And there's cops blocking the road, the main road, all the way around the casino because
grief.
it's the May long weekend.
Yeah.
And there's a huge Sikh festival.
Yeah.
And there's like thousands of people all dressed up. And I wish I knew what the festival was for, but it was beautiful. It was
Yeah.
on the waterfront. And I'm like immediately like, okay, so I already didn't know where I was going. I had a pretty good idea. The bride gave me some direction, although I think the direction was probably more helpful if you knew the building at all. Like she was like, park in this parking garage or whatever. Like I should have asked more questions, truthfully. I should have been like, drop me a pin of the parking garage.
Yeah.
But she gave enough information that I kind of thought once I get there, I'm going to know which parking garage it is. She said it's the parking garage on the hotel side.
Yeah.
But the hotel side is the one that is closed off currently. So I'm like, well, there's another parking garage over here, but that's on the casino side, or what I would consider the casino side.
Yeah.
That was the only really stressful part of my day, but it's not fun to start a wedding day on like a really, I still got there at the exact time that I was scheduled to get there, which like, if you know me, is my nightmare. I usually tell my seconds and anybody that works with me, like, I want to be knocking on the door 15 minutes early because that's about the time that the client starts wondering,
Where does she show up again? What time is she?
I was more communicative, I think, with Amanda than I am with most of my brides, just because I wanted her to know. She saw that we were shooting the day before.
Yeah.
So I wanted her to know, like,
still coming
all the way to Windsor. It's all good. But I sent her a message in the morning, being like, we're on our way, or like bright and early or whatever. And then I posted on Instagram at like, I think it was 6:45 or 7 a.m. Around the time that I was like getting ready to leave the house. And then I posted in my elevator with all of my shit being like, we're getting to ready to go. And sometimes these are like actually intentional just for my clients to know, like, I
see her.
I'll see ya. Yeah. Like, yeah. Anyways, I thought it was a fantastic day though.
It was a great day.
Yeah.
You killed it, man. You crushed it. You did such a good job.
So did you, Tim.
So proud of you.
It was really stellar. I felt like we really, I think we really, we had Tim and I have a very good flow. I really love working with you. I think it's so much fun. I want to talk about one thing that we were talking about actually at this wedding.
Do it.
And we're doing a little bit of a different episode today. We didn't even say this, but we're not going to answer any questions. Tim and I are just going to riff today. If you have a question, we would love if you would send it in to the Shoot Your Shot podcast on Instagram.
Send us a DM. Send us a voice note.
Sometimes Tim and I just want to
riff, you know? Yeah, we
So-
have a backlog of questions, but we're always taking more. So please send them in, add them to the pile. We will sift through them. We read every one. I read every one. And then I'll respond to you and say, this is amazing. Can I use your name or not? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
you had a thought.
One of the things that we were talking about at the wedding was wedding vendors.
Of
all sorts. Drinking alcohol and using substances while working.
Yeah.
While shooting a wedding.
So we work consistently at venues that don't really allow vendors to partake in, alcohol during dinner or, cocktails during cocktail hour. And I feel like that's a rule that they put in place because,
someone screwed up.
Someone decided that they wanted to be a party machine and ruin the idea of responsible drinking for everyone else around them.
Yes.
And I don't want to name names or point fingers at any vendors in particular, so I won't. But
it's always the DJ.
It's always the DJ. But it's 100% DJ.
But it's 100% the DJ.
That's part and parcel because I think we talked about it again at this wedding.
We were talking about it with the DJ and the videographer.
A lot of DJs who get into wedding DJing start as club and like house DJs downtown. And then they realize, it's way more profitable to do private parties and weddings. Yeah. So they slowly transition or quickly transition into this position while maintaining that lifestyle that they have where they're up till 5 a.m. and they're like crazy jacked on this adrenaline of like doing a club scene, and they need to drink to like come back down. So I feel like it's partially
and also I think it's just part of the whole like club culture.
Yeah.
Like it's just, if you're a club DJ,
you're gonna have a couple drinks.
You're probably gonna have some drinks, and you want to be part of the party.
Exactly.
Like, listen, anybody who watches Vanderpump Rules knows that DJ James Kennedy.
Who's that?
I don't want to talk to you.
Okay.
DJ James Kennedy had some struggles with alcohol abuse because he was DJing a ton at the Vanderpump restaurants and different clubs, and he said he didn't know how to DJ a set without drinking.
Oh wow.
He didn't know how to, and also like I always think on Vanderpump that like tequila is probably code word for cocaine on that show.
Yeah.
There's just no way that they exist the way that they do without it.
Without
I think
some kind
like
of-
I just feel like there's no chance that is tequila. But anyways, he had said that he couldn't do it without it, and I think it's probably very, very common for DJs
To become victims of that lifestyle.
But very much not alone. Like photographers, videographers, we are working in the weekend.
Yeah.
You've just shot a really long day, and then somebody comes around with a bottle of wine, and maybe you're considering having a glass or two. Really not like, I mean, well, we were talking about it on the drive, actually, how I said, like, I think all alcohol consumption technically is problematic.
Yeah.
If you didn't need it or want it because of some sort of driver, then you just simply wouldn't have it. So I think it's all, if we want to get down to the absolute core of alcohol, is that it can be problematic.
Or all substances, really. I mean, they all kind of fall under that umbrella.
Of course.
Yeah.
So what's your reasoning for wanting a glass of wine at dinner? Maybe
don't know.
to feel like you're part of the wedding.
The toasts. But I mean, at that point, as a photographer, you're taking photos of the toasts. So,
But let's talk about the people that take it to an extreme.
Yes. Okay.
Let's talk about the people that will drink with guests, that will maybe do shots.
I've seen
with
some
the
videographers do
couple.
that.
Yeah.
And that's part of their vibe. Like, they're included in the video of, like, doing a shot with the bride and groom. And I'm like, what?
Have you ever?
No. Oh, at Mexico, yes.
I was going to say.
Destination weddings, I feel like, are a different
weddings are
breed.
a different story.
Yeah.
Because, well, you truly are part of the wedding, I think, in some way. I do want to say this isn't coming from a place of judgment. These are all my personal opinions on things.
Based on our workflow,
yes.
based on the idea that we still have to drive home from this wedding specifically 3 hours. And then also I have to back up all the footage. You have to back up all the photos.
I just feel like shit when I have wine
it's not
at
great.
like a thing that I have to work. It doesn't make a lot of sense for me.
Doesn't track.
Also just alcohol in general, I feel like makes me feel like a little bit tired and sort of sluggish.
And I'm already tired at that point of the day. For the most part, like I'm usually doubling up on one of these or, coffee, but I don't want another downer, another reason to like feel sleep time. You know what I mean?
No, but for the people who are choosing to be part of the party, and maybe it's more common for photographers who do more destinations where they're staying at the venue, like the venue is the hotel or whatever. Obviously, if we're talking about you getting into a car, yes, there is a hard line there. You are getting in a car. You are not doing shots at the wedding. I don't care if it's one shot. You should not be doing a shot at a wedding if you're driving a vehicle afterwards. Yeah. I'll judge you on that. That's a hard judge.
Hard judge.
If you're staying somewhere, you're not driving anywhere, I think there still comes a question of who's responsible for these images.
Yeah. Like what's happening to your backup process? Are you just going to like put them in a bag and set them aside?
Like, I don't know about you, but I'm not the most thoughtful person as soon as I've started having some drinks.
No.
I'm not thinking about where my second camera is. Did I plug that battery into the wall? Like, there are so many micro decisions we have to make as photographers and wedding vendors on a wedding day that I can't imagine the second I start like drinking.
I'm in patio mode. I can't have that at my work.
No. So I am curious, like, for the photographers that are doing shots and living it up.
How are you getting by? What's your workflow like? What are you doing?
Are you just YOLOing? It's just like,
do you have are you backing up on site and then or putting your stuff, driving home and then going back? Like what's your...
Even with destination weddings, actually. So for those of you who are considering doing destination weddings or are considering having drinks with your clients at weddings, here's what I actually do. This is a real true thing. I will back up. I will finish the job.
Yeah.
I will go and back things up.
Yep.
In my room, or I'll back them up at the reception or whatever, like during the reception. And then I will go put half of my cards in my room and keep half of my cards in a little Pelican case on my person.
Yeah.
So I don't care if I get absolutely like
slam blammed out to sea.
There's a version of their wedding in the safe.
Yep.
And there's a version of their wedding on me. And then I will bring a camera back for fun times, because that's part of the fun of being in the party, of being the person doing the shots and drinking with them and stuff, is that people now feel a lot more comfortable with you. So there is that benefit, is that people do feel more comfortable with you when they think that you are
off the clock, so to speak.
Drinking with
and
them.
also hanging out with them. Yeah.
But I feel like you and I do this solely just by dancing with people on the dance floor.
We implemented a fun rule that came up, I think, virtually out of nowhere, Lindsay. It was like maybe a month ago or so, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
It was a smaller group of people wedding at the Laura Mill. And there was like maybe like 40 guests, 50 guests. Yeah. And the dance floor was relatively small, maybe a bit bigger than the size of this room, maybe double the size of this room, not very big. And people were just standing there chatting. And you and I were like dancing because we're like, we have half an hour left. We want to get some good photos. We got to get some good stuff. People are standing there talking on the dance floor, not moving. And we went over to them. If you're on the dance floor, you need to start dancing. And we said
literally
that to them.
Went up to them and I said, the dance floor is for dancing.
And they're like,
but we were dancing with them. So
okay.
It's like, it's not like we were standing there holding a camera waiting for them like
hall
animals
monitors.
in a zoo.
No.
The
We
dance
were
floor is for
participating.
dancing.
Yes.
We literally are
get
like
moving.
I take my jacket off. We're like going. Like Tim and I are the dance floor.
Yeah.
We've actually had people email me saying like, thanks for getting our dance floor started.
You're welcome.
Because obviously people were like, I don't know, nervous to start dancing.
It's wild.
I'm not a good dancer, so I don't have any business doing this.
No, we're awful.
But I think like just like vibe with people a little bit. And so then I don't feel the need to drink. I used to get into trouble for this when I was younger. People would be like, oh, Lindsay's like so drunk. I hadn't had a drop of alcohol. I can't help it that I'm really fun.
I'm a fun time without any beer.
Can't help it that I'm fun. So I do often wonder if my clients think I've been drinking just because I'm a blast. But
that's on them. That's not on you.
But yeah, one interesting thing is we've had a videographer, and I don't know if you remember this, Tim.
Okay.
That was doing cocaine at the wedding.
Oh, interesting.
Do you remember that?
Was I here at this wedding? You know the venue?
You know what? You weren't actually. Alex Hicknell was shooting it with me.
Okay.
But the videographer, I looked over and I was like, what's going on in the corner there? And then I was like, oh my gosh, this man just did a line of cocaine. Jesus Christ. Which was shocking, first of all. But
what time was it? The evening? When was the?
It was in the flip between cocktail and dinner, and we were the only ones in the reception space shooting the reception.
The sun's still out.
He had been asking me, "Do you want a rum and coke?" I know they don't usually serve us here, but like I know the bartender and I can get them to give us drinks.
Can we give a name? I want a name.
Oh no.
No? Still actively working?
Very much.
Cool guy.
I'll tell you afterwards.
Cool guy.
I'm getting hot thinking about it. Like we probably are working with him. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Cool guy.
But
you know who you
are. He was like, oh yeah, like I know these people well. Like I can get drinks, and I'm like, I don't really need a drink. First of all, at this time of day.
Also, I don't need you to get me a drink.
And I'm like, I'm not 20 years old. Like I can get my own drinks.
You're just like, no, I'm good. Stop hitting on me.
Yeah. No, he was like trying to get us to be part of his party, right?
Right. Bring you to his level. I understand.
But yeah, I do actually think that, well, maybe this is getting into a deeper conversation now, that
what the show
substance abuse is rampant in the wedding industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's why I think it is, and then I would like to hear your opinion on it.
I'd love to add my opinion. If
I think it's because we have a fair amount of free time. We have a fair amount of disposable income. Yeah. And we have less traditional jobs. So if you got into the industry in your 20s when your friends were all going out to the bar on Fridays and Saturdays, you might have felt like you were missing out a little bit on that. So you start maybe like having a couple of cocktails at your weddings. Yeah. And then you maybe, like when I was starting out, I would go out to the bar with my friends after I'd shoot a wedding.
Taylor would tell me about that. He'd be like, I'm going to Phil's after. I'm like,
yeah,
what?
Like we would shoot until 9 or 10 at night. Yeah. Like, and then we would... Like we weren't drinking at our weddings, but then we would go, I would get changed. I mean, I was 22 years old. Yeah. I still wanted to have this fun time with my friends.
On the weekend.
But at what point does that mindset then shift for you into, I'm an adult that doesn't go to like nightclubs. So
what's the alternative? What do I do at home?
Right. And then also what happens when it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And you are like, well, I never got the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
weekend starts at noon.
Yeah. And you don't have a boss. Like I have heard this story from so many people. I have been there myself. So this is not a judgment at all, where you're like, there is no 5 o'clock. Like there's no end of business day. No. Maybe when we have a working lunch, you end up having a beer. That beer ends up turning into an afternoon. And
You
then
go for a tour and then it's like,
and
oh,
unless you're
where's the
truly
day gone?
really, really conscious of your consumption with alcohol or whatever it is you're partaking in, it could really easily get out of control.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe people in other jobs started seeing that more after COVID,
I think you're right.
like during COVID.
Yeah, because they don't have the traditional 9 to 5. They don't have, a clock in, clock out situation. On top of what you said there, Lindsay, I think because of the wedding industry that we work in, so much of the day is bookended again with like mimosas in the morning. Let's celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
Drinks
We're
and
surrounded
shots,
by alcohol.
Drinks and shots
Yeah.
at night. And so when you go home, you're like, oh, this world of consuming, drinking, enjoying yourself, having a good time all the time
Yeah.
is just sort of ingrained in you that is a thing that people do.
Yeah.
It's a thing you look for. You look for those shots of like people toasting wine. You look for those shots of the groomsmen doing like Jaeger shots, whatever the hell they're going to do. And those are like moments that you want to capture. So you're just kind of subliminally putting those those ideas onto the bookshelf of your brain to be like, oh, those are important things to capture and note. And so when you go out into a social setting out in the world that's not a wedding, you're like, where are the drinks? Because that's where the good times are.
Right.
And those are the things I want to capture and
It's so interesting.
highlight in my life.
I never thought of it like that, but
I
it's
just
very
thought,
true.
yeah, it's a wild thing, and I wonder what the history books will say.
I think alcohol in our like culture
Yeah.
as in general is really
Romanticized.
romanticized in a way that, first of all, it shouldn't be. Like, that's crazy. Like, imagine we romanticized
Imagine
say,
vegetables.
cocaine.
Oh.
We
It's time for cucumber, everyone. And then it's like, oh, cucumber. We'd be so healthy.
But imagine we romanticized drugs.
Yeah, like hard
Like,
drugs.
mums are on social media being like, "Oh, I just need my little mum drugs."
Leave my bump.
You know, like they say, like
Mummy juice?
like mummy juice. Like I can't stand like the mum influencing like around alcohol.
Yeah.
My brother is 5 years sober from alcohol
Yep.
as of this year, and I'm so proud of him. I think
Congratulations,
it's, like,
Ryan.
exceptional. And honestly, his own consciousness surrounding alcohol consumption has really, over the past 5 years, really made me more conscious of it. I check in with myself constantly whether or not I want to cut back. Like you've taken a year off drinking, period.
Yeah.
I take sober months very frequently,
Yeah.
or I come up with rules for myself of like, I'll only have drinks on 2 days of the week this month,
Yeah.
or whatever, because like holidays, summer months, there are times where it just feels like if you're a social person and you go to a lot of events and you see a lot of people,
Have a cocktail.
every single event is an event where you might have a cocktail.
Yeah.
And even if it is only like one drink, but if one drink over 7 days feels like very just, I don't want that in my life. So I check in with myself a lot, really, because
Good.
my brother identified this as being an issue in his own life.
Yeah.
And it's also probably why I think if more of us were honest with ourselves, we would probably say it's not the thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But because I truly love wine,
Mm.
and I really love a great cocktail, and I enjoy
What do you
the
enjoy about it?
enjoyment
Not to
of it.
therapize you a bit, but like, what do you enjoy about it?
Like, I enjoy the taste of it.
Okay.
So I enjoy a non-alcoholic cocktail just
Love
as
it.
much.
Yep.
I enjoy a non-alcoholic beer, so I've switched to non-alcoholic beer at home when I want to have a beer.
Mm-hmm.
I try to not drink at home unless we're having people over.
Yeah.
Just because we drink so frequently when we see people. Like, if we go out for tacos on Tuesday or whatever, I'm going to have a drink with my friends. So
Yeah.
on a Wednesday, I'm just not going to. Like, I do enjoy it. And I also, like, and who doesn't enjoy, like, the little buzzy buzz that you get? Like, it's nice.
Yeah.
But because I enjoy that, I feel like it's a requirement for me to be constantly checking in so that I don't have to feel the need to do a total sober
Teetotaling lifestyle.
situation,
Yeah.
which
yeah.
who knows, maybe we'll be looking back on this in a few years and,
Be like,
and
what
I'll
the
be laughing, being like, Lindsay is absolutely in need of being sober. I don't know.
This was an early warning sign.
Yeah, no, I think, but I, it's funny that I started this conversation out because we were talking about this at our wedding.
Right.
About people using drugs and alcohol at weddings.
Yeah.
And I turned this into do we think that wedding photographers and vendors have alcohol, specifically alcohol
Yeah.
abuse problems? I would actually love to hear from more of you guys on this, because I talk about this in our circle all the time. Like, I feel like I talk about it very frequently.
Absolutely. Please leave a comment, and
but yeah,
either on the post on Instagram or the YouTube comments below. Like, march down to the comment section.
Also,
let us know.
like, on a very real note, if you do feel like you are struggling with alcohol abuse and you don't have someone to speak to in your life about it, like, feel free to reach out to us, because I think that there's a spectrum. It's not just like you're either sober or you're an alcoholic. There is problem drinking, and I think it really comes out a lot in creatives. It comes out a lot in people that have ADHD.
Yeah.
Comes out a lot in people that are just like have creative minds and
have to build their own structure.
And sometimes it's helpful. You have a couple of drinks and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm such
the
a
world
creative.
is so clear.
I literally said to Taylor last week, I came up with like one of my favorite ideas. I had told you about it earlier about that studio space. I'll tell you about it.
Yeah.
That came after I had had a couple of cocktails, and like, well, I'm gonna sound really uneducated and really stupid, but who was the person that said, write drunk, edit sober? Hemingway
was write drunk, edit sober. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right.
And he's probably not wrong. You do think creatively for sure when you've had some beverages, but it's nice to be able to also think creatively when you haven't had beverages. But anyways, on a really real note, if that does feel like you and
please
you
reach
don't
out.
know who to speak to,
we'll
like, we would love to talk
resources that help you.
Because that's not a fun way to live if you don't want to be anymore. So
speaking of beverages, I'm almost out of this, and I think we're done on time. That's
absolute
an episode,
mom, my guy.
Oh my gosh, 51 minutes. Who are we? Lindsay, great episode this week. We didn't answer any questions that weren't posed from last week, but I feel like we touched on some really good stuff here. And if you're new to the show, please comment, subscribe, hit that bell. Give us all the love. We would love
a little review if you're on Apple Podcasts.
5 stars, please.
Some Wiener Patrol left us a 3-star, which I feel like, first of all, if you're listening to this, immediately unlisten. No, I'm just kidding. You're allowed to keep listening.
You're allowed to have your opinion, but it's wrong.
It is wrong.
We are a 5-star podcast.
But if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, even if you're not, please just open the Apple Podcasts app, look for the Shoot Your Shot podcast, leave us a 5-star review. A 3-star is such an interesting one because it's like, you don't hate us.
Yeah.
You just thought we were firmly mid.
Come on.
Rude. It's allowed. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. Just
even
yours
though
is
they're
wrong.
Yeah. And then go to your parents' house or your friend's house, grab their phone off the table, and then open it up, and then also give us a 5-star on their phone as well. That'd be really helpful. It just helps the show.
Yeah, it helps the show. It helps all of us grow and get better. Thank you guys so much for listening. We are so stoked. We hope that whatever you're up to right now, whether you're driving in your car, whether you are
on the train,
editing away, we see a lot of people posting their editing stories while watching. We love that. We hope that you are feeling well, feeling happy, feeling
inspired,
excited for the season ahead of you.
Live, laugh, love.
Live, laugh, love, and leave. Bye.
Lindsay, great episode. Cheers.
Cheers.